Good afternoon. I'll start like I usually do with a quick assessment of our last performance. Obviously, it was a special night at Heinz Field on Sunday night, not only in terms of saluting the great Joe Green, but getting an AFC North win at home in front of our fans. Ben obviously was stellar, but I think a lot of people had very solid positive contributions in all three phases. It was a good team win for us, very necessary one. Again, like I said after the game, don't want to make more out of that than what it is. We just simply even the score versus a team that we play quite often. Those games have been hotly contested over the years, particularly recent years. They're often extremely close. We got beat by 20 in week 2 at their place. We won by 20 the other night. So from that perspective, the matchup is still a very even one. And so we move on from there. And I think it's appropriate that we do that. I think that's one of the things that we got to, quite frankly, guard against. Winning a big emotional game like that and having the ability to move forward individually and collectively to the next challenge will define us. It always does. It's universal in football. There are many examples that you could cite. Teams having to move on. We lost to Cleveland a number of weeks back, and they go to Jacksonville and lose to Jacksonville the next week. Is a recent example of that, not excluding us, but obviously you could include us in some of those issues. So we'll be moving forward with an eye toward those realities as we prepare this week. Wasn't a perfect game for us by any stretch. We didn't run the ball extremely well. They didn't either. That's usually a signature to matchup, talking Steelers-Ravens, and it was in that football game. We gave up an easy score early. And, that's something that we talked, quite frankly, all the week about that we could not do. We had to make them earn their points. We had to be good in the red zone. We had to be good at sudden change and so forth, not give them easy scores because how good they are in those situations. We gave up an easy touchdown down the field to Torrey Smith early. We fumbled a center quarterback exchange and really kind of in a critical moment, 3rd and 1, at a critical stage of the game. That's something that can't happen. That's good fundamental football. We got to be 100% on those, whether it's quarterback up under or whether it's shotgun. And we gave up a 108-yard kickoff return, which, quite frankly, was ridiculous. Guys dancing around and so forth before the ball's kicked and then get one run back on them is unacceptable. You won't see our kickoff team dancing anymore moving forward before we kick the ball off. We're faced with a stiff challenge in that regard this week. Percy Harvin has a great reputation as one that's well-earned, but some of the things is just about your mental approach and how you approach what it is you do and your readiness. And we let the moment get away from us. We just scored a significant score, an emotional score, and the music's playing and so forth. And the bottom line is we look ill-prepared, and that's unacceptable. And so we'll make the necessary corrections there, and hopefully that won't happen again. As we look at the state of our team from an injury standpoint, we got a few things that we got to deal with, but such is life. We'll never complain about that. We'll just simply make the necessary adjustments and move forward. Troy will be out this week with a knee sprain, and then we'll evaluate him at the top of next week and see where we are. Same would be said for Ryan Shazier with an ankle sprain. He'll be out this week. Ike is getting evaluated today. He's got a CT scan today. I anticipate him being a partial participant in practice and continuing to work himself back into form, but we'll wait to see what the CT scan says before we change anything regarding him. Shamarko Thomas has another hamstring injury, the opposite hamstring. He could be characterized as out this week. We'll characterize Ross Ventrone, as questionable. He missed last week with a hamstring, but I was downstairs and saw him do a little bit of work yesterday. He looks like he's got a chance. Obviously, we'll leave the light on for him, particularly considering how thin we're running in the secondary, given some of the men that I mentioned. But the guys that we've called upon to this point have done an admirable job in terms of not only handling their secondary responsibilities and embracing the challenges that come with that, but they haven't let go of the rope in terms of some of their special teams responsibilities. Guys like Bryce McCain and Antoine Blake are really doing a nice job, and Will Allen can be included in that group as he stepped in place of Troy for the rest of Sunday's football game. Now let's quickly transition to the Jets. Obviously, I know that they're a 1-8 football team. but I got a lot of respect for those guys, not only from a coaching standpoint, but, I think they got some quality players. I think you can look and see some specific reasons why they are where they are. And, obviously those things are correctable. They're correctable every time you step into the stadium. So we got to be prepared to play and play good football against a good, tough football team at their place that I know that will be ready. Probably the most telling statistic in terms of their present situation or circumstance is they're last in the league in turnover ratio. They've only generated 3 turnovers, I think, through the first 9 games, and they've turned the ball over 18 times. So when you're minus 15, there's a strong possibility you're going to be losing football games regardless of how you're playing in any of the 3 phases. And I think that, therein lies a lot of their plight. I think their play, as you look at it, doesn't reflect their record. Obviously, the turnovers are an issue for them, and I'm sure that's something that they'll work to rectify. I think that's one of the reasons why they're going with the savvy veteran at quarterback and Michael Vick. And while I'm on that, I guess I'll start with what they're doing offensively. I think, what they're doing of late is a little different than what they've done in terms of looking at their large body of work. We got a lot of things to get ready for in regards to some of the changes that they're going through offensively. Michael Vick's playing quarterback now. You know what he brings. He brings a wealth of experience. He's a big-time competitor. He's got some serious mobility. They'll be able to do some things in terms of pocket movement by design. He's able to do some things by ad-lib as plays break down or the pocket breaks down that creates issues that may affect your menu in terms of what it is you desire to do. When you pressure a guy like this guy, you got to be really sharp. It needs to be balanced pressure. Sometimes you can overload sides and stuff when you pressure quarterbacks that aren't quite as mobile. If you give this guy an escape lane, he's going to abuse it. And we got to respect that element of it. He's a left-hander. Some of their misdirection passes, some of their play passes and stuff come at you from a different perspective in that regard. We got to have a nice week in terms of preparing for some of those things. There's the Percy Harvins factor. And Percy's extremely talented. He's strong. He's got great run after and run ability. He's got great vision. He's got good, strong hands. He's a combat catch guy. He's extremely tough to tackle. He's got great contact balance. He's got contact balance like a running back. I think that's what makes him such a dangerous kick returner. And I think that's why also during the course of his career, both in New York and in Minnesota and in Seattle, you've seen him work out of the backfield some and actually get handoffs from the quarterback. That showed up on the recent week's tape. He's a reverse guy, a fake reverse guy. He's a wide receiver screen guy, quick game, shallow crosses. They find as many ways as possible to get the ball into his hands and get the ball into his hands quickly and let him do what he does, which is, of course, create splash plays with his run after. We got to be on the screws in terms of that. They move him around quite a bit in a variety of personnel packages, and that kind of gets me to my next point. Coach Morningwig is always a challenging guy to prepare for. His utilization of personnel, pre-snap shifts and motions, and myriad of gadgets always challenge you, always work you in terms of making sure you're on the screws fundamentally, in terms of some of the pressures and things that you do. He has ways of exploiting that. Unique personnel groups, 3 tight ends, 2 wideouts, no backs on the field. Opposite of that, two tight ends, 3 wideouts, no backs on the field. They'll use 3 backs on the field. They'll use wildcat. They'll use pistol. I've seen all of that in last week's performance and in the most recent week's performance. So we're going to spend a lot of time studying that tape and focusing on what they are of late because obviously it's changing some and usually does as you get a division of labor and you add a significant component like Percy Harvins, but you can also talk about a significant component in terms of what they're doing with Michael Vick at quarterback. You got to respect their running game. Their running game is really solid. They're top 8 or so in the league in rushing the football. They got 3 backs. They got Chris Johnson. They got Ivory. And they got Powell. All guys are over 4.0 and then some per carry. They do a nice job of running the football. They utilize all 3 backs. Powell is featured a lot on 3rd down. Ivory's more of a power guy. Obviously, Chris Johnson is a guy that's capable of really breaking you down with explosion plays and getting on the perimeter. He was a significant component of what they did in last week's game, was a positive contributor to their efforts. Again, if you look at defense, I think they're playing really good defense. I think the difference between playing good defense and great defense a lot of the times is your ability to generate turnovers. And they haven't been able to do that. And that's something that's always been a signature of Rex Ryan and Dennis Thurman defenses. Up front, they got a couple special players in Richardson and Muhammad. Obviously, first-round picks, young first-round picks. Richardson, I think, was Defensive Rookie of the Year a year ago, and rightfully so. Those guys are special. They're talented guys. They're anchor points, if you will, in terms of all the things that they do. Those guys play in all situations. They got some big people that play in rundowns, 1st and 10, 2nd and medium. Harrison, 94, is a nose guard that fits the mold in a traditional way. He's very combative. He's a tough guy to block. He's very disruptive and active for a 350, probably 350-plus pound guy. They got a couple outside linebackers who are uniquely large and tough to deal with for that position. Copels is, 290, 6'6", 290. This guy's playing out in the C and D gap area over tight ends. Their little guy, if you can call him little, is Calvin Pace. He's about 6'4", 260, 265 pounds at the other outside linebacker spot. That creates issues in terms of running the football consistently. I think they're, 3rd in the league or whatever against the run, and I think it starts there. They got two really talented young first-round players in Richardson and Muhammad, and they got a couple other big people that play along the front. And Harrison, the nose guard, and those outside linebackers are enormous for the position. They got a nice combination. An inside linebacker, David Harris, has been around for about 8 years, former Michigan Wolverine, inside linebacker. His partner, 56 Davis, is a third-year guy who's very adept at coverage, be it backs or tight ends. They utilize him in that way. They've experienced a lot of turnover and injury and so forth, unforeseen things in the secondary that I imagine is affecting how they do business back there. Milliner's not playing. Obviously, Demetri Patterson was a guy they had in the fold as they developed a plan of utilization of people in the offseason. He's no longer in the plan. Ellis Lankster's on IR. You could go on and on. They got issues there, but, we've got issues there. So from that standpoint, the playing field is level. I'm sure they don't care about our problems, and we're less concerned about theirs than they are. But we'll go in the stadium and play football. And we got a big week of preparation ahead of us. Looking forward to it. It's always fireworks when you play Rex Ryan groups. They play with great spirit and energy. We expect that as we go to New York. I'll be happy to address any questions you might have.
Mike, when you play a quarterback like Michael Vick, he's going to be different a little bit than Andrew Luck or Joe Flacco. A lot of pressure, aggressive posture on the defense in the last 2 weeks. Will his capability in that respect cause you to take a different approach?
It may not cause us to take a different approach, but it does make you analyze the approach that you take in that regard and the ramifications of it. If your rush lanes get distorted, you give them an escape lane, you don't have balanced rush and so forth, you got issues with a guy like this. But you got those same issues if you're rushing forward and your rush lanes aren't appropriately distributed. It won't slow us down in terms of how we play, but we will ponder the possibilities of ramifications of breakdowns in terms of what it is that we do because there's stiffer ramifications when you play a guy that can destroy you with his legs. And he not only is capable of destroying you with his legs, but he can buy time and create and keep his eyes downfield. And, of course, that's a different set of situations and circumstances that you got to deal with in that area as well.
A couple times. Will you use a guy to spy on him on occasion?
Again, we've yet to meet defensively. This just, the initial stages of it. Obviously, those things are under consideration as we prepare.
Mike, the last two games you've barely used the no huddle. I think maybe 2 plays each game. Does your offense operate better that way?
If you base it on the last 2 performances, certainly. So go ahead and write that story. But we still like no huddle. It's a function of what we do. Like I've said repeatedly over the course of the year, it's a good component of what we do. We make a decision week to week whether or not we choose to utilize it. The last 2 weeks we have not. We've had success without it. We've had success with it right away.
Mike, if you look at the differences in the offense, let's say the last 3 games versus the first 6, what's been a bigger factor? Offensive line giving Ben more protection or the coalescence of the wide receivers getting open more frequently so they don't have to protect as long?
I just think that, it's the general development of cohesion that comes with a group or a unit or a team, for that matter, over the course of a football season. After the first quarter of the season, I assessed where we were. We were 2-2 and 2-2 in a lot of ways, and we needed to be a team on the rise. And thought it was appropriate time that you start making that run and doing things that are going to cause you to gain cohesion and so forth. And it should reflect the time spent together, not only formally but informally, practice fields, meeting rooms, and so forth. And I think more than anything, the explosion, if you want to call it that, is just a function of development of cohesion, a black and white development of division of labor in some instances, guys getting comfortable with their assignments, guys finding their in-season rhythm. It's probably a myriad of things.
How similar is what Rex Ryan's doing with the Jets defense to what he used to do with Baltimore? Is there any advantage in coming off a game against the Ravens to play the Jets?
There's a lot of similarities. It just is. But when you had the type of success that Rex has had defensively everywhere he's been, you'll see residue, if you will. There's going to be some similarities. He's going to have a personality. What Calvin Pace does for him in terms of being an end, an outside linebacker, and a just guy, if you will, is very similar to what Adalius Thomas used to do for Rex. The way that Copels and Babin share the position is very similar to the way Dumerville and Upshaw share the position in Baltimore. A lot of things that they do in the secondary in terms of bumping the single receiver side is the same things that still persist in Baltimore. Jimmy Williams is going to bump you if you're on the single receiver side. So there's a lot of things that you can compare and, deem familiar and so forth. But the bottom line is you also got to respect that he's an innovator. And anytime you step into a stadium, you could be presented with something new, and it's probably more likely that you will than to say if.
How were you able to keep the situation with James Harrison after his release from being acrimonious and able to bring him back then after that? Was there anything that you did special there did you stay in contact with him at all?
You're going to stay in contact with James because, he has a house down the street from me. So he's tough to avoid sometimes. But, we've had unique success with James. And he's one of those guys that's a Steeler for life regardless of what uniform he wears. He respects our shared history. We respect our shared history. And so I think it just kind of naturally makes it easier to come back together, if you will. Oftentimes decisions that are made in this business are tough ones, but they're just that. They're business. They're not personal. And we took it as such, and I think he took it as such. And I think it made it easier for us to come back together.
Mike, were you surprised by the impact that he had specifically the other night? And could you talk about how that might have rubbed off on his teammates?
I'm not surprised by James. I think that the longer I'm in this business, I've come to expect unique results from unique people, and no question that James doesn't fit the norm in a lot of ways, and in his play probably chief among them. And so I'm not surprised when he does things that are, seemingly against odds and so forth. James is a guy that was cut 3 times early in his career and went on to become a perennial Pro Bowler and NFL Defensive Player of the Year. That's seemingly against the odds. So I think that kind of defines his career and how he goes about playing football, and I think he's really charged by that and rejuvenated by those type challenges, being able to prove people wrong and do things that are seemingly that he's unable to do.
Mike, I was going to ask you the same question about Brett Kiesel, because he seems to be bringing that energy that was needed as well along the defensive line.
They're similar guys in that way. Brett's a 7B or whatever, 7th round draft pick from a long time ago. 7th round draft pick still in the league after 10 years, it's usually because they don't fit the norm, that they got some special qualities. Those are special guys. That's why we're willing to do business with them again. That's why they've been in Pittsburgh as long as they've been in Pittsburgh. In today's NFL, you get anybody wearing a helmet, one helmet that extended period of time. It speaks to the fact that they're special people.
Has Harrison's recent performance been a mere matter of getting in physical shape, football shape, or just getting used to the competition?
I think it's all of the above. I think that he'll attest to that. I think there's a level of in shape that you have to get to in terms of being successful at football. He's worked hard at getting to that. He's been away from us for over a year, so we don't take that for granted in terms of him getting back up to speed in terms of the details of our schematics, and the details obviously is what produces the plays or the splash plays. And then obviously just him developing techniques that he utilizes in terms of what allows him to win, getting off on the ball, working his rips and hand usage and hand placement on tackles and so forth. That's muscle memory, and that requires some work as well. So I really think it's just work in all three areas that's allowed him to kind of get up to speed and put him in position to do James Harrison-like things. And, we need it to continue, obviously.
Follow up on Dale's second part of the question. Have you noticed an impact emotionally, psychologically on the rest of the defense, his impact?
I hadn't noticed it, but I hadn't been looking for it because I just know that there are positive things that comes with having James around. People get real comfortable in James's presence. James is the type of guy that you like having on your football team and on your side in a lot of situations.